So dudes, welcome to another Agent How-To. This time you guys voted for KO. The Valorant protocol's equivalent of Future Trunks, if he was the offspring of HK-47 and a Mac Pro. KO is a robot from the future, built with the goal in mind of preventing Reyna from using her blinds to gain sight control.
If they set that android free, it will be the end of all of us! No!
I've got your trail.
Enemy suppressed.
KO has the unique ability to silence enemies, keep them from using their abilities. But he's also got a set of flashbangs that function similar to how they would in CSGO. Plus, he has a fire grenade that shares the same throwing physics as Killjoy's nades. So if you know lineups for Killjoy, you know some lineups for KO too. I'll start with the knife. The knife has the physics of a triple barred Sova arrow. KO's knife will silence anybody within the effective radius through walls, unless the knife is shot before its detonation. Affected enemies will show up with a tooltip on the left side of your screen, and you can see specifically which ones get hit by the ability, which lasts for 8 seconds. The fact that you can tell which enemies specifically get struck by the ability is huge, because it can allow you to use your thinking cap to narrow down the anatomy of the enemy team's plans. Whether they decide to follow through is up to them, but that gives my teammates on A and B useful info. The knife is also useful for pinpointing the exact locations of enemies without the need to face check them, which is huge. It's basically free intel. As an attacker, knife ropes on split, and if it doesn't reveal anything, you know that you can play a lot more aggro here, and possibly push up to the left without much of a contest.
Sage is wasting her util.
Ropes clear.
Keeping Rex up.
Got your race.
I'm on.
Heaven, jet, CT.
Nice, she's heaven.
Right side.
Hey, 117, 117, 117.
Nice.
One of my favorite aspects about KO's knife is that it can be used to prevent takes even if the enemy is just about to commit to one. Think about what goes into an attacker's execute in Valorant. Jet's gonna dash onto sight, Sky's gonna flash, Reyna's gonna blind, Cypher's gonna
The
use.
servo from your arms for my tripwire.
Unlike Breach's ult that has huge crowd control capabilities, or any of the typical fire grenades various Valorant agents have at their disposal, KO is able to deny the individual pieces of an opponent's execute and force them to take gunfights on your terms, all with an ability that has a 40-second cooldown, which means that you can use it initially to make an execute for the enemy more difficult, and then if they rotate, you can use it for their rotate as well. It's a great ability, and aside from it being his gimmick, the ability's silencing functionality of this gadget and his ult, which I'll cover later, help make him a well-rounded initiator that is committed to more than just setting up kills for his teammates. He can put things into his own hands as well. Use his knife frequently to gauge the positions of enemies and use the minimap. If your knife covers the entirety of sight for retake, when it pops up 2 bad guys, you can call 2 on sight. Likewise, don't just assume something is clear just because the big circle covered most of it. If you get nothing, it should narrow down your peek to the part of the map that you don't have intel on. For attacks in particular, the knife is great at clearing spots where enemies will try to swing you during the plant. Split on A site is a great example where getting intel on elbow is extremely important to make sure the attacker can plant safely.
My tripwire.
Normally, you would leave this up to a teammate, so at the very least, you can get their refrag. But KO can get that information for free without face checking it.
One of my cameras is broken.
And if he reveals there are indeed people in elbow, maybe Raze can throw a nade behind it or something. There's nothing bad about free intel. It is the most valuable piece of utility in any comp shooter. KO provides that for free and also gives your team more options while shutting down the enemy's options for a brief period. Use it as much as you can. The aspect of KO's kit that CSGO players were drooling over when they saw him get added to the game were his 2 flash grenades. Obviously, if you played CSGO, there are some aspects to these flashes that you're gonna find come to you pretty naturally. Basically, you can bank them off walls, you can pop them.
Nice, good play.
There's no pop. There's no pop when she opens it. Pop. You pop them, pop them. You don't turn them like it's peanut butter or jelly or something. You have to pop it, ladies and gentlemen. You have to pop it. Pop.
The physics and the basic principles of these flashes are pretty similar to how they work in CS, so you would think you have the perfect flash grenade, right? Well, the fuse timer on them is really long, and it makes an audible zoop. It makes a sound cue. There are lots of little things you can do in terms of the way you peek with these nades that are more mechanically involved. With that downside of being so easy to look away from, you might think that these flashes stink, and they would stink if the flash effect on them didn't last 5 million years.
I didn't know you were gonna do that. Just close left though.
Compared to other flashes like Phoenix's or Yoru's, Kayo's flashes, since he is an initiator and flashing enemies is kind of his job, are quite long.
2 hours later.
Alright, I'll play the whole thing again just to let you know I'm not fucking with you. One of the longer flash durations in the game, up there with Sky. So if you can take advantage of the fact that enemies need to look away from these things as you swing them, you can get some free kills. KO's role as an initiator is somewhat misleading since I would describe him more like an initiator duelist hybrid. Yeah, he can help set up his teammates to get kills, but skilled CSGO players will find themselves at home with his flashes, even if they're not quite as good as the CSGO ones. At the very least, the cool part about these flashes is that since they're the most straightforward and easy to use in the game, you don't need to do a whole lot of homework on them to get at least something out of them. KO's Molly is unique in that instead of making a zone of fire that does damage over time, it deals a lot of damage in a few bursts. This is really useful in post plants if you have them on hand to deny diffuses, pre-plants on defense to deny plants, and occasionally as a tool to just get somebody out of a spot they're holding. This isn't a lineup video, but if you look them up on YouTube, there's tons of them out there. It's not so much the Molly that is remarkable as much as the fact that it rounds out KO's kit in a way that allows him to push the envelope on attack if you've got duelists on your team that just sit in the back and do nothing. The ability to gather intel, flash, and clear enemies from positions from far away, all by yourself, is pretty nice. However, you should keep in mind that the Molly damage propagation does not work around corners, as you can see here. Also, it does more damage towards the center. KO's ult, or as I like to call it, off, forces all opponents to off for 4 seconds if they get hit by KO's concentrated EDM blasts. For 7 ult points, you can basically stop a site execute completely by yourself.
Flashbang.
Shutting down the ability of enemies to use their ultimates in turn. KO sends out 4 pulses. You can tell when the ability is activated when it makes more of a sustained sound towards the end. If that wasn't enough, he gets a combat stim too.
Enemy suppressed. Flashbang. No one walks away.
Ooh.
One enemy remaining. Spike down, C.
Oh, my guy.
And if he takes 100% damage in this state, he goes into a down but not out state, where he can't move, but he can be revived. And the revive has a pretty short timer on it. It's a powerful defensive tool to prevent takes from enemies, and it's great for creating space on attack. But the biggest downside to it is that your little Skrillex concert is visible and audible to everybody on the enemy team, and it basically gives away your position for free. So just be prepared for people to push you anyway while it's activated. Not like they can flash you or anything, so maybe try flashing them instead.